When it comes to 2D games, we immediately think side-scroller, platformer, or maybe even top-down. From the games I've previously discussed, it might seem like I'm a little infatuated with the genre, but Child of Light is a whole lot different. Side-scrollers lend themselves quite straightforward gameplay most of the time, traversing, fighting, and puzzles in between. Sure, there have been games to push the boundaries with interesting and unique elements, but none quite so much as Child of Light. On the surface, Child of Light looks and seems like a normal side-scroller, but once you dig into it, you find yourself deep in a game with many layers, and not quite a side-scroller at all. Visual novel-like dialogues, JRPG-style turn-based fighting, and hand-painted artworks in a stunningly sculpted fantasy world brings this creation into a genre of its own. With initial ideas quite far from what the game ended up being, it's quite clear that all changes and decisions were done with great thought. We weren't handed a typical by-the-numbers story and received something that feels nostalgic yet remains original. The game was initially considered to include a Prince Charming of sorts, but the director Patrick Plurd and writer Jeffrey Yohalem decided that they'd rather have a strong female character who wouldn't rely on a man or have a story wrapped around the inclusion of a love interest. No doubt good decisions all round. The game dialogue flows like poetry, and Patrick Plurd himself described it as a playable poem. The entire experience is reminiscent of a fairy tale set in the fictional world of Lemuria, and the incredible art just adds to this. Child of Light combines game styles, art styles, and storytelling to a near-romantic soundtrack and lets us experience it all in a classical cinematic way. Initially intended to have multiple different endings based on our decisions, the idea was ultimately scrubbed, and what we got instead was something that lets us get engrossed with the story and the life of the protagonist Aurora. Though many might criticize this form of gameplay as being too linear, the idea here isn't to let you play a choose-your-own-adventure story, but instead immerse yourself in a deep and emotional journey the same way you would when reading a great book. Thanks to the turn-based style combat, the game allows us to play with multiple different characters when in battle, though the main focus remains on following Aurora and her story. Similar to the old JRPGs, we play as a single person when exploring and then get full use of the camaraderie whenever we encounter an enemy. The game is filled with colourful and interesting characters, of which Aurora is of course the protagonist. The innocent yet strong heroine has a soft demeanour, but she doesn't feel naive in a frustrating way. She's young and a lot of what she faces is new to her, but we don't mistake her youth for insecurity or weakness. Much like seen from Ori and the Blind Forest, Aurora also has a companion in the form of a floating light, in this case a firefly called Igniculus. Igniculus is childlike in some ways but wise in others, and he barely ever leaves Aurora's side. He is a guide, a helper, and a friend to her, and his helpfulness throughout the game cannot be overstated. While travelling around with Aurora and Igniculus within Lemuria, we meet and join forces with multiple different other characters, of which the jester Rubella is one of the first. Rubella is friendly and upbeat, though sometimes comes across as a little slow-witted, and will often finish her poem-like dialogue without rhymes, only to have Igniculus correct her. This kind of interaction between the characters brings a charming life to their conversations, and make for a few amusing moments. Following Rubella, another interesting character is Finn, a sorcerer of sorts who, though only 13 years old, has an impressive beard and long grey hair. Aurora's middle sister Nora also plays a significant role in the game, along with multiple other characters. The list is rather extensive. There's Robert the Mouse, or Bulmus, as the mouse-like race in Lemuria is called, who joins Aurora in an attempt to prove his love to another Bulmus called Margaret. We meet Genevieve, also known as Jen, the Piscean girl. There's Oengus the warrior, Tristus, Rubella's lost brother, and also Cordelia, who serves as a secondary antagonist and is the eldest daughter of the Queen of the Night. Each character has extra motives and their own quests or goals, and none are simply placeholders. These are people we can get attached to, and we do. Finally, there's Umbra, the Queen of the Night herself, and ultimately Aurora's primary foe. Also known as the Dark Queen, Umbra is the direct opposite villain to the protagonist. She is the dark to Aurora's light, the General Zod to her Superman. Umbra is her equal and reverse, and is in all ways everything that Aurora opposes. After playing Child of Light, I felt like I'd stepped out of an artwork itself. Nothing here is without reason. The landscapes and backdrops are jaw-droppingly beautiful and paints a world that feels like it was created in a child's imagination. They also took an interesting approach regarding the characters, with some being 3D and others being 2D. Somehow this never feels off or odd either, and all it does is place greater focus on the main characters who are, for the most part, 3D. The general design is detailed but not busy, for example the portraits used during dialogue scenes, which are charming and simplistic. Child of Light has the atmosphere of an old animated film, blended and bonded with a children's book and fine watercolor art in a way that never makes it feel juvenile. It encapsulates the culture of a true fairy tale more so than many modern films have been able to, and has hints of being inspired by greats such as Sleeping Beauty. Now another aspect where Child of Light absolutely shines, or better yet makes itself heard, is the sublime music. The original soundtrack was composed by Beatrice Martin, also professionally known as Cœur de Pirate. A Canadian singer and songwriter from Quebec, Beatrice manages to shape a soundtrack around the story and visuals of Child of Light that adds to its fairy tale experience. The soft and frail piano tones translate Aurora's innocence, and the grand and impressive orchestral sections build drama and tension around key events, or even simply during the battles. There seems to be two different underlying melodies that Beatrice had focused on when building the soundtrack, giving a proper split between the themes within the game. It's there for the charm of certain moments and the darkness of others. Beatrice also brought a piece of her own style into it without losing what Child of Light was intended to be, creating a fresh musical experience that really sets itself apart from other soundtracks. Child of Light, as previously mentioned, is split into two different genres, a side-scrolling explorer with a few simple puzzles, and a turn-based battle system. The game has an impressive and deep leveling system with substantial options for all characters. There's a real opportunity here to shape each member of your camaraderie into a fighter that caters for a different kind of threat. Additional to leveling, you can also gather gems that you can combine to form different and new gems, all of which can be slotted into your weapons, armor and abilities to add unique traits to each. Opposition comes in different forms and threats like dark or light, fire or water, and so on. Playing these strengths and weaknesses off against each other is the only real way to realize victory in every fight that you will have. There's no secret to your fights, it's all about your plan of approach. At the start of a battle, we are presented with the time bar that indicates when a character will have her or his opportunity to act. When your turn arrives, you are given 4 options: act, potions, flee or party. Each of these options has its place in a battle and forms a key part of your battle approach. Different characters also have their own strengths and weaknesses that serve very specific and handy purposes. For example, Nora's lull and quicken abilities that can quickly shift a battle in your favor if used at the right time, which in her case is early. Now, to add even another dimension to the combat system, you can also use Igniculus during battle and completely independently from it to heal characters, blind enemies and collect wishes from nearby flowers. Now, wishes fill his energy bar, which in turn will again allow you to heal more characters or blind more enemies. And wishes will also replenish the health and magic points of your fighters, giving you that extra opportunity to shift a tough battle in your favor. The gameplay, and especially the combat system, is deep but not overly complex, and I could easily go on for many more hours about it, but I don't think we have quite the time. All you need to know is that the options of approach are vast, and it makes every encounter unique and exciting. The story of Child of Light starts off magical and mysterious before dropping you right into the middle of Aurora's tale. Child of Light is set in 1895 Austria, where Aurora, a princess, falls ill and assumedly dies in her sleep. She awakens in the land of Lemuria, a fantastical dream world, and soon meets her firefly friend Igniculus. Not long thereafter, she discovers a sword which going forward serves as her weapon of choice against the many foes that she faces. Aurora soon comes to learn that the Queen of the Night is trying to steal the light, which is the sun, the moon and the stars, and so her quest begins to stop the evil queen and recover Lemuria's light. What follows is a grand journey through the mysterious and fantastical world where we meet encouraging friends and deceptive foes. We travel through caves and towns, over trees and floating islands, and even into the clouds. The attention to detail within Child of Light is extraordinary, from the small character traits like how Robert had learned to fight thanks to business meetings and Aurora's fake crown. There's so much more here than just the tale of one princess. Each character has a story to tell and a personality to explore and get to know. No one is expendable and no one is forgettable. In a world where poetry seems to be going extinct, Child of Light is the modern answer, and it brings more than just ballads and rhymes. It gives us a chance to live within a story that takes us back and makes us sad, happy, and even angry. It lets us help Aurora be everything that she can be. There's so much more here than just what you see.